Okay, on to the next segment. This is an op-ed written in the State Journal Registry. I believe I've got that right. And this is a paper down in Springfield. And it's written by Madeline Barr, policy manager at CASE, Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, and Amanda Pyron, who's the executive director at the Chicago Metropolitan Battered Women's Network. For those, you should be getting a link in the chat, hopefully. Madeline Barr was on our show a few months back, maybe 5-6 months back, talking about, and there is in the chat, thank you. They were in the chat. I mean, she was on the show 5-6 months ago to talk about this very thing about, they released a report about how bad the sexual assault response is by the Chicago Police Department. There's no doubt that is true. But she also talked about what's in this op-ed, which is the fact that the criminal justice system, the agencies, try to shield themselves from reform by exploiting survivors, as if the reforms will somehow automatically hurt survivors. And this happened most recently in HB 3653, which was the large omnibus bill set of reforms signed not too long ago by Governor Pritzker. Sorry about that. Governor Pritzker into law. It had all kinds of things, front end, middle, back end justice system reforms. And so here's one quote that's telling about what this op-ed is trying to communicate. Change for the better is coming due to Governor Pritzker's signature on the criminal justice reform legislation, HB 3653, that will end cash bail. Wait a minute. The justice system is telling us cash bail is not very good. That's going to be the end. Victims are doomed. Not true. So we're going to go into two more quotes. One is longer, and actually I'm going to give you, it's a long quote here, but I think it's really important to read it so you get an idea what is going on. Policies rooted in fear-mongering and racism have never actually served survivors, yet too many people continue to push an agenda that perpetrates a criminal legal system that fails victims and disproportionately harms Black and brown communities. It's a great day when you're seeing advocates for survivors speak up like this. There's no doubt about it. I'll continue. Contrary to the false arguments advanced by opponents, the new pretrial system will not simply release every person arrested for a crime. For example, it will ensure people held for forcible felonies, including domestic violence and sexual assault, are kept for up to 48 hours. It will give the state time to gather information about whether someone poses a threat to others. It is a welcome reform to the current practice of releasing people who can pay the bond with minimal regard for the threat they may pose to survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, as they just so eloquently said and said better than I, the end of cash bail does not mean everyone's being released pretrial. It doesn't mean that. It's much more nuanced. And it also doesn't mean just because someone can afford the bail, they get out even if they're a threat. Here's one last quote. Domestic violence survivors will be able to ask police to finally take away abusers' guns after their FOID card, firearm identification card for concealed carry, or just carry now in Illinois, I believe, is revoked, and law enforcement will actually follow through. What does that mean? Check this quote out. Something you don't see in the papers all too often. There was some blowback not too long ago about this a little bit, but 34,000 had the courts ordered their guns removed from them, and by state law, the police are supposed to do that, and most still have their guns. 34,000 abusers were supposed to have their guns removed. And because the police are lazy, incompetent, overworked, take your pick, most of those people still have their guns. That's how much that justice system, as it sits before this legislation was passed, cared about victims of violence, survivors of domestic violence. They had courts order it. The police just didn't do it. Mind-boggling. And yet these are the same agencies claiming these reforms, they're going to make survivors, they're going to be deaths, murders, they're going to be so much less safe than they are now. It's like, well, if you're not removing 34 guns from 34,000 people who have had court orders to remove their guns from them, how much less safe can those people be? Come on. It's a joke. It's a great op-ed. I suggest everyone reads it. And if you, in the link is the link to our YouTube interview, the Chicago Justice Show interview with Madeline Barr several months ago about a report they did about the CPD's response to sexual assault. It's really interesting. Look at the op-ed. Watch our interview with Madeline Barr. It's very interesting.